little t traumas are things that can impact us daily, or incidents that have happened to us in the past that have a significant impact, but maybe don't rise to the level of something that can cause post-traumatic stress disorder or can be symptomatic. But the way that I've historically defined trauma is it's an experience that changes what we believe about ourselves and what we believe about the world around us. And trauma is essentially an event that overwhelms our capacity to cope in the moment. And so we can have an experience that really changes and defines who we believe we are in the world.
Welcome to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kuehlhorn, and I'm excited to have you join me as I interview community members and business leaders from the communities in which I live, work, and serve through my business Kooler Garage Doors. We're going to bring you highlights on characters in our communities. Why? Because community matters, and I want to know more about who is behind our business and leadership in order to understand and support the community fabric that our relationships make up. And collectively, we can build stronger communities that support our lifestyles, our youth, and our health.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Koolers Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kuehlhorn, and today I'm sitting down with a new friend, Marisol Solarte Erlacher. And she is a speaker, a trauma expert, and resilience consultant with a 20-year career in mental health and human services. Marisol is noted for fostering change in individuals and organizations. She hosts the Resilience and Resistance, a celebrated podcast highlighting successful Black, Indigenous, and women of color, and was a finalist for the Denver Metro Chamber Business of the Year Awards in 2022. Currently, she provides trainings to help companies and organizations manage chronic stress, reduce burnout, and build resilience. Marisol, thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and share with me and the listeners, where are you beaming in from? Where's your base?
I'm in Denver, Colorado. I live near City Park, so I'm close to downtown, so I'm in the heart of the city.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in the northwest suburbs of Illinois. So I'm from Carpentersville, Illinois. Shout out Carpentersville. And Carpentersville is a really interesting place to grow up. For anyone who knows the northwest suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
There are some suburbs that are very well known, and then suburbs that are not known at all. And Carpentersville in that category. So a very working class community. My dad is an immigrant from Colombia, South America. And my mom came to Carpentersville through Mission, Texas, which is a border town in Texas. And they ended up landing there and met each other. And that's how I came to be.
Gotcha. I have to look that up because I'm rooted in Chicago as well.
Okay. I felt a Midwest vibe from you.
Yeah. We definitely see each other.
Yeah. I felt it.
Yeah.
Carpentersville is near Elgin, Illinois, where I went to high school, which is near Barrington, Illinois. And the interesting thing about that is just the demographics and complexion of each suburb, if you grew up in the suburbs, are very different. And Carpentersville and Barrington are neighbors in terms of suburbs, but very different socioeconomic places.
Yeah, I get that.
On the map. So very, very interesting place to grow up. And I feel like whenever I go back, and obviously it's been a long time since I've lived in Carpentersville, but it's there's some things that stay the same and some things that I feel like it's forever changing.
Yeah. Where did you go from there?
Such a long journey. Well, essentially, I always knew that I would leave Carpentersville, only because I don't know why. I don't know why I always, I would leave Carpentersville. And my parents were actually, they were both teenagers when I was born.
Yeah.
So my mom was 16 years old and my dad was 17 years old when I was born. And so they were teenage parents. And they actually ended up marrying each other at 20 years old. So my dad finished high school. My mom eventually got her GED. And then I think really were trying to, obviously they were kids and they were trying to figure out their way, but ended up together. And when they were married at 20, they ended up having more children. So my brother and sister were born later. So a big age difference. And so my parents were they are the hardest working people that I know, sincerely. And I feel like I credit my discipline and work ethic and my drive to them. But they were very upwardly mobile, so they were very committed. We, had a little 2-bedroom apartment when they got married, and then they ended up saving money, got a down payment on a house, bought a little house in Carpentersville. We went from apartment in Carpentersville to a house in Carpentersville, and I think they knew. They've never told me this, but I think they knew, like, when we have a house and we want to establish ourselves, we'll have more children. So they were pretty intentional about that, and But then when I was in high school, they ended up moving to another suburb right nearby, 10 minutes away, called Algonquin. And from there, I went to high school in Elgin. I ended up going to a private school, a private Catholic school in Elgin, which was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And from there, there's a very, very, very windy road, we'll say. And that would be like another 2-hour long podcast in which you would have to console me deeply about my odd choices or questionable choices during that time of trying to find myself. But essentially, I ended up, when I graduated from college, I decided that I wanted to be a therapist and found my way here to Denver to come to a graduate program to get my master's in counseling. And so came here sight unseen. I was pretty excited. I was coming from Chicago, so I'd been living in Chicago on the north side and was super excited to come to another city. And I came in 2001, and anyone who is acquainted with Denver in 2001, there was nothing here. It was like tumbleweeds downtown.
Yes.
And the skyline was not what it is today.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it was a lot of culture shock, but I've been here over 20 years now, and this is home. I absolutely love Denver, and I'm so committed to the city.
Yeah, it's beautiful. In your work these days, you went into therapy as a therapist, trained. Now you're bringing that into business, nonprofit and for-profit. How does that transition occur?
Well, man, that is such a great question. So when I first started as a therapist, I knew that I wanted to do trauma work. So I really understood at the beginning of my career that that's what I wanted to do. And so my very, very first job is, and this whole backstory really helps lay the foundation for how this transition happened for me. But my very first job was at the Rape Crisis Center here in Denver. It's currently the Blue Bench and formerly the Rape Assistance and Awareness Program. And I absolutely loved that work. But as many people know, even if you don't really understand the process of trauma or the trauma therapy world, it is a very taxing profession. And it's something that I really committed myself to do. When I used to do supervision and instruction at the University of Colorado at Denver in their Master's of Counseling program. And I remember, I had so much hubris. I was like, I'm going to be I used to tell my students, I'm going to be the trauma therapist that lasts 30 years. When you leave here and you think about me 20 plus years from now, just call my office because I'm still going to be working. And because it's difficult to sustain this work.
Yeah.
And so I moved into private practice in 2007. So started my private practice, started And in that journey, or the beginning of that journey, it was really about learning how to be a business owner as well. And so lots of different iterations of my private practice. In 2015, I had to leave because my husband became ill in 2010, came back in 2013 part-time, and then 2015 went back in full-time to clinical practice, private practice. So was kind of on this trajectory to really build a practice, started to hire other therapists. And, as most of us in 2019, I was like, 2020 is going to be the best year ever. I'm going to do all of these great things in business. I'm going to it's going to be the year for me. And, we all know what happened. So the pandemic happened, and I was really unsure about what was going to happen with my practice. For us therapists, we were, there was this weird uncertainty around, are people going to be able to transition to clinical practice? Are we going to just lose our practices altogether? And as we know, it took a total turn, a different direction where people in mental health were overwhelmed, and people were looking for services for different reasons. Obviously the impact and the stress of the pandemic, but also people actually had to slow down and listen to themselves and realize that they had some work to do. They didn't have the opportunity to avoid anymore. So in 2020, I foolishly decided to overwork myself, which, as I'm telling people not to do, to take care of themselves, to do all the things, and, to be mindful of what the impact of the pandemic and the grief that we were all dealing with during that time. And so at the beginning of 2021, my family and I decided to, and this is where every time I say this feels very pretentious, but hear me out. We decided to move to Hawaii temporarily because, my son was still, I have a 14-year-old son, so he was still doing virtual work. I was seeing all clients virtually, so we thought this was an opportunity. We had a friend who had a house on the Big Island and had allowed us to rent her house during that time. And so as soon as I got to Hawaii, I had a very intense trauma response to all of the vicarious trauma that I had taken on in the previous year. And so it was really, really, it was a very strong, couldn't sleep, all the symptoms related to vicarious trauma. And so I decided, I'm a Scorpio. I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but I was like, I'm done. I'm closing my practice. I don't want to see clients anymore. I'm done. I can't live like this. And, I have to find another way. And so, most people are like, slow down, take a minute. Maybe closing everything down is not the right choice. And so it started this journey for me around how do I create a sustainable life for myself? What is it that I want to do? And so I immediately made the decision to start to titrate my practice down and start to move out of clinical practice. And during the pandemic, I had lots of friends who had, were CEOs of companies or executive directors of organizations asking me to come speak to their staff to help them deal with all of the stress and panic and trauma that was coming up around the pandemic, and really loved it. And had knew that I wanted to start to move in that direction, and was kind of getting the messages and the signals that was the right thing to do. And came back to Denver. I hired a strategic planning company, which seems like really crazy for a small business like mine. But for me, I love strategic planning. And, I love sticky notes. I love, tell me what my rocks are every quarter. I want to know.
Yeah.
But that was a process of really digging deep around how I had formed my identity around being a therapist. And that's why it was hard for me. It wasn't really about the work and the service and all the things that I needed to do. It was more about really trying to preserve the sense of who I was.
Yes.
And so that helped this transition around like, how do I have greater impact? How do I have broader reach and still really have an impact and still talk about the things that I love?
Yeah.
So that's the long journey to that transition.
I love that. One thing of clarification, just for our listener, you mentioned vicarious trauma, and I'm assuming that is essentially in working with individuals, hearing their stories, feeling what it means to them, and picking that up, right? And this
Absolutely.
is why the realm of a therapist and people that work in this space do tend to burn out in a short amount of time. Like the 30-year run is unique because of that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, Matt. We have, as we know, the way that our brains function, we are impacted by other people's emotions. We're impacted by other people's stories.
Yes.
And our brains have this beautiful way of connecting with each other, which allows us to have deep, loving, connected relationships. It allows us to have empathy. It allows us to be in connection and community. But it also has the other side where, as we're taking all of that in, we're also taking that trauma, those experiences, and the impact on our physiology. So, yes, it was me being very. I don't want to say that I wasn't mindful. I think that it was just a different experience to be in the pandemic and to have this like pull for myself to be like, I want to be of service and I'm here. I'm not doing anything, right? So I can be the person who can step into that role, and so it definitely had an impact, and that impact probably started before. But it was exacerbated for sure.
Hey everybody, this is Luke from Kooler Garage Doors. Just want to take a quick second to talk about our sponsor, Sommar Garage Door Openers. In our opinion, Sommars are the highest quality product on the market today. We recommend them for all of our residential garage door installs because of the variety of features they include, such as Wi-Fi connectivity and safety features such as a fixed chain, which moves along a secure rail to ensure your garage door opens quietly and safely. Click on the link in the description to learn more about Sommar Garage Door Openers.
Okay, so I'm not sure how this question is going to form itself yet, but around the idea of trauma, and you had mentioned, during the pandemic and this forced slowdown, a lot of people were now needing to be with themselves. And that in itself can stir up stuff from the past. And we all have, and I don't care, one thing I have found in my journey is that humans have the ability to define meaning however they want to define meaning. And I believe that this is one of the components of trauma, whether it's little t or big T, in how we put it through our filter and put it meaning to it. And so across the board, I think every human has some level of trauma, and I think there potentially is a continuum, and I'd love to gain your feedback on this. But in this component of the pandemic and slowing down and all of a sudden having to be with ourselves and not having the ability to go throw ourselves into work or go to the bar or whatever the distraction is, right? But at the end of the day, I'd love to get your perspective and a little bit more definition on what you think trauma is. And then, in dealing with it, what is the importance? What potential or possibility opens up when we actually go to that place?
So I think that's a really great question, Matt. And I really love the way that you framed it around big T and little t traumas, because little t traumas are things that can impact us daily, or incidents that have happened to us in the past that have a significant impact, but maybe don't rise to the level of something that can cause post-traumatic stress disorder or can be symptomatic. But the way that I've historically defined trauma is it's an experience that changes what we believe about ourselves and what we believe about the world around us. And trauma is essentially an event that overwhelms our capacity to cope in the moment. And so we can have an experience that really changes and defines who we believe we are in the world. So, for example, I think I use this example. This is the most accessible, but people could have a car accident. And it might not be a significant car accident, but it could be something that really changes what we believe about our safety. So we can start to believe, I'm not safe in the world. And so that belief can translate into change of behavior. So if I don't believe that I'm safe, then I might not go out as much. I might start to isolate more. I decide I don't want to drive. It changes how my ability to access certain things. So trauma has a significant impact on the way that we're able to understand ourselves and understand the world around us.
See how
and
this
so our
goes.
ability to be able to really resolve trauma, to be able to look at it and be able to process the feelings and experiences related to it, it can be truly transformative. And part of, I think going back to the impetus of the question around the pandemic, avoidance is a strong part of trauma, because once our capacity to cope is overwhelmed, we don't believe we have the ability to cope with those feelings or those thoughts. So we move into full avoidance of those feelings. So if I feel overwhelming shame, I would rather avoid that than have to process that shame and deal with that shame and come to terms with it. And so we tend to busy ourselves. I myself, included. I love avoidance as a strategy. It's my favorite coping mechanism.
Me too.
That's why I started my own business. Now.
It can be incredibly uncomfortable.
Oh, and so most people don't want to do that work because of the beliefs that we've built up around it. And as we'll get further and further away from that event, we're more and more prone to build strategies to not go back to that event. And so it's really important to really do an evaluation of what that trauma could be in your life and to think about how you might want to resolve it. Because trauma fundamentally is not just about this. It's not just about the psychological impact. Obviously for me, that's a significant part of it. But there's so much research that correlates unresolved trauma with our physical health. It's so clear that our inability to deal with our trauma is going to catch up to us in some way. And so, and our body has to find a way to deal with it. So even if we think like that's in the past and I never even think about it, it's still there. Because our brain, the way that it holds information and the way that our body stores that information, it doesn't just go away. It just finds a different path.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hearing that, some of the cost to remaining distracted and not going to touch some of the thorny parts that are in our past history is potentially impacting our physical health, certainly our mental health. And if we try to repress it, I've seen in my life where if I don't want to touch it and I'm actively avoiding it, like it's going to squeeze out somewhere.
Totally.
It's going to present itself sometimes louder than it would have been if I gone and touched it the first time.
Absolutely.
But then the flip side, the benefit is what? Like it opens up new levels of potential possibility. What other benefits are there? Reducing stress likely health.
Oh yeah. Obviously like chronic stress is the number one indicator of health, and unresolved trauma is going to compound that chronic stress. But I think overall, that our ability to resolve our own trauma allows us to understand ourselves more fully, because whatever we're trying to avoid is probably the thing that we need to understand about ourselves. So whatever, when we try to push whatever part of us feels like, I don't, like you're saying, it's like those prickly parts that are like, I'm good. I'll just be over here.
Yeah.
And we love to live in the parts of ourselves that are most acceptable and the parts of ourselves that are most tolerable to us. And so working with that trauma helps us really start to embrace the parts of ourselves that are prickly but need attention. And we begin to feel more whole. We begin to feel more, they use this word integrated, but when I think about integrated, I think about we feel like we can accept all parts of ourselves, that we can accept all of those feelings. And, I'm of the mind that life is really, truly about our emotional capacity. Because I want to feel all of the feels, I want to be able to like fully access every emotion. And if we cut off one emotion, we don't have that full range to feel all those feelings. Like I want to feel I want to feel love to the fullest. I want to feel excitement. I want to feel joy. And I feel like that's such an important part of life. That's the core of being human.
Would you say that in order to feel these incredible peaks and highs of love and joy, there is also the need to feel the lows of frustration, challenge?
Yeah.
Shame.
We have to feel the depths of grief. We have to feel the depths of shame.
Yes.
We have to feel, we have to feel the anger and the rage and understand what that means to us. So we absolutely, I think about emotions as like a dashboard. If you cut off one, and I don't really know. I mean, I kind of know how dashboards work. I feel like I'm basic understanding. But if you're going to cut one wire, the whole dashboard's not going to work. They're all connected fundamentally.
Yeah.
And we want to feel all of the good things, or what we perceive as good, and we want to avoid what we perceive as bad. But we have to do both. We have to be able to, if we allow ourselves to do that, then we expand as human beings.
Yes, I agree. When you come into organizations, what are some of the practical tips and tools that you bring to folks that can help attune to emotions, help identify traumas? Because I would imagine one of the skills here is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And if we don't know to even look, then there could be something that goes unresolved for years and years until something like wakes us up. Right?
Totally.
Like, how do we, I guess, what are some of the practical pieces for reducing some of the stress or even identifying traumas that then we can either figure out the resources to, go and handle and navigate and integrate? And
I think there are day-to-day things that can very much help us. When I go into organizations, I'm typically speaking to this idea of chronic stress in the workplace. And most people, the way that we've designed workplaces are not really built for self-reflection and self-awareness. They're built for burnout. They're built for burnout and chronic stress. And so what I tell people, I think there are lots of ways to do this in our day-to-day lives. So I think that you're absolutely right. The first thing is just building the capacity to be with ourselves. So even taking, and again, for me, this has been a journey as well. What I do is I just allow myself, even the 30 seconds to check in with myself. Because people don't like to sit and be with themselves. But just checking in with myself for 30 seconds at the beginning of my day and saying, like, what do I feel? What's happening with me? What am I noticing? What are my thoughts? Where am I in space and time right now? Doing that as a practice just is transformative because it gives us information about what we need throughout the day. So I think that in itself, if I can get people to do that much, that can be transformative. The other piece that's really important is to help people remember that you have the ability to, in doing that, to help your nervous system every day. So our nervous system is the thing that is, helping us move through those highs and lows through the day. So it's the thing that's responding to what we perceive as threat or potential threat in our environment. So if we're able to like check in and be like, okay, I'm just going to take a minute, take a deep breath, ground myself, step away from my computer for like 2 minutes, and then come back, we're helping regulate our nervous system, which has a cumulative effect. It impacts us in the long term. Because we tend to like be the culture that loves to white knuckle it. So like, I'm going to keep on going until I have my,
That's right.
I have my 2-week vacation in 3 months, and then I'll rest,
That's
you
right.
know?
That's
so it's
right.
just building in moments and periods of rest, and just noticing, and then being very intentional about how we create boundaries in our lives, I think, the thing with COVID that was like really lovely was the ability to slow down, but it also blurred a lot of boundaries for us around work and life. And I was even talking about someone, I think I saw this tweet that was like, what did you all do when there weren't cell phones? Did you just stop working? And I was like, yeah, we left work and we stopped working. But I think it's this idea of like, being really intentional to like keep work at work and like be able to create space for yourself to be able to rest and allow your system to recover. And, even just, I know for myself during, like, I'll have moments where I'm like, I just need to like just step outside and take a walk. And I did a training, and this is so related to the question. And someone said, I build in 30 minutes to eat my lunch every day, but I have too much work. So I can't take a lunch. So what do you think I should do? And I was like, take the lunch.
Take an hour.
Go outside, take a full hour, and step away from the laptop. But part of that is that once our nervous system is activated and there's this constant hypervigilance to all the things that we have to do, it all feels critical. And so prioritizing and helping ourselves know, like, you know what, it's probably going to be okay. And me taking the hour to eat is actually going to help my overall well-being than getting that thing done, because there's always going to be another thing.
Always.
Always.
I mean, as long as the eyes open up, then the journey continues and we get to play. And, what I find fascinating in this conversation is, you are bringing tips and tools to help people in their journey, because I don't think that we're ever going to get to this realm of no challenge, no trauma, no obstacles. Like, that's part of being human. Even if everything was taken care of and we had supplemental income, like, we're going to have some kind of challenge. That's just part of the human journey of how we grow.
Totally.
And you're bringing tips and tools on just helping people navigate that and to continue growing.
Yeah. I'll say this, Matt, just because I think that you summed it up perfectly. But what I tell people is that the number one indicator for mental well-being, like what helps us know that we're mentally fit or mentally well, and a key indicator for happiness, like the number one key indicator for happiness, is our ability to regulate and manage difficult emotions. That's it.
Okay.
So if we learn that, if we can help ourselves know, like, and like, you're right, like there's never going to be the mountaintop where we're like, and I'm free of any distress and there will be no adversity in my life ever. It's really about like, adversity is always going to be there, always. And if you can learn how to manage that and deal with it, you will 100% be happier and healthier. And that's 100%. That's a lifelong journey.
Yeah, that is a lifelong journey. Marisol, how do people reach out to you? How do we get in touch?
Great question. So you could just go right to my website. So it's marisolerlacher.com. And I'm sure there are lots of ways there's probably lots of buttons where you can contact me on that page. So email is probably the easiest way.
Awesome. We'll include that in our show notes for sure. And I'll encourage people to reach out to you. And my understanding, just so we have some clarity for the listeners, is that you're bringing in services to mid-sized companies, nonprofits, and really having the ability to help teams manage stress,
right,
in order to be more effective in delivering their missions.
Yes, Matt.
Yes.
Can you be my PR person?
Sure. You bet. That's awesome. I really appreciate this conversation. I hesitate to close it up, but we're going to. I feel like we could just keep diving forever and ever. And it's really an important skill set that you're bringing into the world. It's an important topic to have conversations around. And it is about the journey. It's about being human and feeling all these emotions, being along for the ride, even when it sucks.
Yeah, when it sucks.
And knowing that the sun will come out.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Matt. I really appreciated the conversation.
Marisol, thank you. I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Koolers Lifestyle Podcast. We count on your subscriptions, your likes, your shares, and I encourage you to do that now. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, lower right-hand button. If you're on audio, download this, share it, and we look forward to having you on the next one.